Asha stood at the edge of the Apache camp, where the last line of shelters thinned into open land. The wind moved quietly through the tall grass, carrying dust instead of rain, heat instead of relief. Below her, the valley stretched wide and tired. Earth cracked like old skin, brush sparse, the river reduced to a thin, stubborn ribbon that shimmered under the sun. This land had once fed her people without question. Now it demanded more each year and gave less in return. She watched the distant hills, their outlines softened by haze, and felt the familiar weight settle in her chest. Every season, the grass retreated farther. Every year, the waterline crept lower. And every year, the white settlements pressed closer, their fences multiplying like scars across the valley floor. Asha folded her arms across her chest, not against the wind, but against the feeling that she was standing on the edge of something slipping away. She was no longer just a girl who gathered herbs at dawn or listened to elders tell stories by the fire. She had not been that for a long time. She was the daughter of the Apache chief. That truth followed her everywhere now, in the way conversations softened when she passed, in the way children looked at her with quiet expectation, in the way warriors lowered their voices, as if her presence carried judgment even when she said nothing at all. The camp did not see her as Asha anymore. It saw her as a future, a decision, a responsibility waiting to be used. Behind her, the low murmur of voices drifted from the council fire. The elders had been meeting since the afternoon, their words heavy, their silences heavier. Asha did not need to hear them to know what was being discussed. She could feel it in the air, the same way she could sense an oncoming storm long before the first cloud darkened the sky. Her father had asked her to come see him before nightfall. When she entered the council circle, the fire crackled softly, sending sparks into the dimming sky. Her father sat straight-backed on a worn blanket, his face lined by years of sun and decisions that never came without cost. The elders sat beside him, their expressions grave, their eyes reflecting firelight and worry in equal measure. He did not waste words. "The valley will not carry us through another dry season," he said, his voice steady but tired. "The water no longer belongs to the land alone." Asha listened without interrupting. She had learned long ago that leadership did not always raise its voice. Sometimes it spoke quietly, because shouting would not change the truth. "There is a ranch south of the river," her father continued. "The man who owns it controls the deepest well, the grazing routes, the path traders now follow." Asha's jaw tightened slightly. A white rancher. She knew the stories. Fences pushed outward. Water rights claimed with paper and guns. Men who spoke of fairness while measuring land they had never bled for. "And what does he want?" she asked, her voice calm despite the tension tightening behind her ribs. Her father's gaze held hers unflinching. "Peace, stability, an agreement." The words settled between them like a stone. An agreement. Asha understood what that meant. She understood what it always meant when survival entered the conversation. Her people did not trade lightly. They traded when the alternative was hunger, when children's ribs showed too clearly, when elders began to count winters instead of seasons. "You are my daughter," her father said quietly, "and you are Apache. That makes you stronger than any bargain, but it also makes you necessary." Necessary. The word did not wound her. It hollowed her. She nodded once, accepting the truth without surrendering to it. There would be time to speak later. Time to decide what parts of herself could bend without breaking. When night fell, Asha left the camp alone. She told no one where she was going. She only needed space, one stretch of darkness where no eyes followed her, where she could breathe without carrying the weight of an entire people on her shoulders. The moon hung low and pale as she walked beyond the shelters, past the last dying fire, into the open land where the valley opened its arms in silence. She followed an old path, worn smooth by generations of footsteps, leading toward the sound of water she could barely hear anymore. Asha did not know that the stream she sought crossed the edge of another man's land. She did not know that the same water her people prayed over each dawn had become the center of someone else's world. She only knew she needed quiet, and she did not know that fate, patient and unkind, was already waiting for her beside the creek. The creek lay quiet beneath the moon, narrow but stubborn, its water slipping over smooth stones with a sound Asha had known since childhood. This was not just water. It was memory. It was prayer. It was the place where women came at dawn to gather their thoughts before facing the day, where elders once washed their hands before speaking of hard choices. Asha stepped carefully onto the bank, her moccasins barely disturbing the sand. The night air carried the scent of damp earth and dry grass, a fragile balance that felt thinner every year. She knelt, lowering her hands toward the water, letting the coolness run over her fingers. Then she froze. The creek rippled again, not from current, but from movement. A tall figure rose from the water several paces downstream. Broad shoulders caught the moonlight. Water slid down, skin darkened by sun and labor, not leisure. His hair was wet, pushed back carelessly, and a long, old scar cut across his ribs, white against bronze, the kind earned long before comfort found a man. Asha's breath caught hard in her chest. For one sharp heartbeat, neither of them moved. She straightened instantly, instincts flaring. Her hand slid to the small knife at her belt. Not in threat, but in readiness. Her posture was rigid, alert, every muscle tuned to danger. This creek was not a place for strangers. It had never been. The man noticed her movement and stopped where he was, water at his waist, hands open and empty. His eyes lifted to meet hers, calm eyes, steady and unafraid. The eyes of someone who had spent years in open land, where fear was a useless companion. He did not rush to cover himself. He did not curse or shout or bark orders. He simply looked at her, measuring without malice. Asha felt heat rise beneath her skin. Not shame, but anger. This place mattered. This water mattered. And here stood a white man, alone, unbothered, as if the land had always belonged to him. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice low and firm, carrying no tremor. The man tilted his head slightly, considering her words. Moonlight traced the lines of his face, strong jaw, worn features, the look of someone shaped by weather and work rather than indulgence. If her presence surprised him, he did not show it. "I didn't know anyone else still used this water," he said. The sentence was plain. No apology wrapped around it. No challenge either. Just a statement, offered like a fact learned too late. Asha's fingers curled at her side. "Still used it," as if the creek were an old tool left behind. As if her people had faded into rumor and dust. "This water isn't abandoned," she replied sharply. "It never was." He nodded once, slow, absorbing the meaning beneath her words. His gaze dropped briefly to the knife at her belt, then lifted back to her face, not alarmed, not mocking. "I can see that now," he said. The silence between them stretched, thick and charged. The only sound was the creek slipping past stones that had watched generations come and go. Asha studied him despite herself. He did not carry himself like a drifter. There was no hunger in his eyes, no reckless curiosity. He stood like a man who belonged exactly where he was, even when confronted. That steadiness unsettled her more than hostility would have. She took a step back. "This place is sacred," she said. "You shouldn't return." He hesitated, then dipped his chin slightly. Not in submission, but in acknowledgement. "Didn't mean disrespect," he said. "I'll be gone." Something in his voice caught her attention. Not softness, not charm, just restraint. The kind that came from knowing when not to push. Asha turned away before he could say anything else. Her pulse was loud in her ears as she moved along the bank, the moon throwing her shadow long across the ground. She felt his gaze on her back, steady but not invasive, and it stirred an unease she did not want to name. She hated that she felt it at all. By the time she reached the edge of the trees, her anger tangled with confusion. The encounter replayed in her mind. The calm in his eyes, the scar that spoke of old violence. The way he had not claimed the creek, but had not apologized for standing in it either. She paused once, gripping the strap across her shoulder, breathing in the night until her chest steadied. Then she walked on. Asha did not know his name. She did not know that the land around the creek belonged to him, that the well downstream fed his cattle, that the grazing routes her people had followed for decades now ended at fences he had paid to build. She did not know that the man she had just left standing, half submerged in sacred water, was the same man whose ownership tightened slowly around her tribe, like a closing hand. All she knew was that she had walked away from the creek unsettled, her thoughts louder than the night. And behind her the man watched the darkness where she had disappeared, standing very still, unaware that fate had just crossed his path and would not let either of them walk away untouched. The council lodge smelled of smoke and old leather, a scent that clung to every hard decision ever spoken within its walls. The fire at the center burned low, not for warmth, but for tradition. Shadows moved across the hides stretched along the frame as the elders took their places, one by one, their faces lined with years that had not been gentle. Asha stood just inside the entrance when her father called her forward. His voice was calm, but it carried weight, the kind that pressed down rather than struck. She crossed the lodge slowly, aware of every pair of eyes following her. No one spoke her name aloud, but she felt it hanging in the air, heavy with expectation. She knelt where she had knelt since girlhood, back straight, hands resting on her thighs. She did not bow her head. She had learned that leadership did not require shrinking. Her father waited until the lodge was still. "The land is changing faster than we can move," he said. "The water no longer answers to the seasons alone." Asha listened, her face composed, though something inside her tightened. "The ranch south of the creek," an elder added, voice rough as gravel. "Its wells run deep, deeper than the river now." Another voice followed. "The cattle drink first, the fences come after." Asha's jaw set. She did not need them to say more. She had seen the shrinking waterline herself. She had heard the coughs of the elders grow deeper at night, watched children drink more dust than rain. Her father met her eyes. "The man who owns that land controls the water," he said, "and the roots our people once followed freely." The image rose unbidden in her mind. Moonlit water, a broad back cutting through the creek, calm eyes that did not flinch when she spoke. Her chest tightened, but she kept her expression steady. "The winter will be harsh," her father continued. "If the herds cannot move, if the water freezes shallow, the old ones will not last. Neither will the infants." The words settled like ash. Asha did not look away. She would not give the council the relief of seeing her break. "There is only one path left," an elder said quietly. Her father's voice followed, softer now, but no less firm. "An alliance." Asha felt the shift before the word was fully spoken. "A marriage," he said. The fire cracked, sending sparks upward. No one spoke for a long moment. Asha did not cry out. She did not gasp. She did not ask why. She understood too well. "And who is this man?" she asked instead. Her father did not hesitate. "The ranch owner by the creek." The lodge seemed to tilt slightly, though she remained still. "The man at the water. The man who had stood unashamed in a place her people prayed over. The man who had said he did not know anyone else still used the creek, as if the land itself had been waiting for his notice." Asha's fingers curled slowly against her palms. "So the water's traded," she said, her voice level. "And I am the price." Her father's gaze softened, but he did not deny it. "You are not a price," he said. "You are a bridge." A bridge. Something meant to be walked across. Something built to carry weight until it cracked. Asha inhaled slowly through her nose, steadying herself. Around her, the elders watched with careful silence. They did not look cruel. They looked desperate. That was what hurt the most. She rose to her feet without being dismissed. No one stopped her. "I will not shame my people," she said quietly, "and I will not pretend this is a choice." Her father stood as well, placing a hand over his heart. "We ask this because we must," he said, "not because we wish to." Asha nodded once. She stepped out of the lodge into the open air, the night cool against her skin. The camp lay quiet now, fires reduced to embers, families settling into uneasy sleep. Somewhere a child coughed. Somewhere else, an old woman murmured a prayer. Asha walked past them all, her steps measured, her face unreadable. Inside her, something hollowed out. She did not feel fear. She did not feel anger. She felt used. Not sold like cattle, not discarded, but placed carefully on a table where land, water, and survival were weighed against a single human life. Her life. She stopped at the edge of the camp and looked out toward the dark valley, where fences cut invisible lines through land that had once belonged to no one and everyone. Asha closed her eyes. "I am not being given away," she thought. The realization came sharp and clear, cutting deeper than grief. "I am being deployed." Her spine straightened as she opened her eyes again. "I am not being sold," she whispered into the night. "I am being used." And somewhere beyond the dark, the creek continued to run. Quiet, claimed, waiting for the man who owned it to meet the woman whose people depended on it. Neither of them yet understood what the agreement would truly cost. The ranch came into view just after midday, stretched wide beneath an unforgiving sky. Low hills rolled behind it, dry grass bending under the wind, fences cutting deliberate lines through the land. Cattle moved slowly in the distance, their shapes dark against the pale earth. Everything about the place spoke of control, measured, earned, defended. Asha arrived without ceremony. She rode with two men from her tribe who stopped at the boundary and went no farther. She dismounted alone, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. This was not surrender, it was arrival. The man was waiting near the main structure, a long, weathered building that smelled of wood, leather, and dust. He stood with his thumbs hooked into his belt, hat low against the sun, the same man from the creek. Dry now, fully dressed, solid as the land beneath his boots. He did not smile. He did not stare. His eyes met hers once, briefly, then shifted, not away but down, respectful of distance. He did not approach her immediately. He let the space remain between them, as if acknowledging that crossing it without permission would be a kind of trespass. Asha noticed everything. The way his shoulders stayed relaxed, the absence of guards or witnesses, the lack of performance. This was not a man displaying ownership. "You made it," he said simply. She nodded. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Wind brushed past, carrying the scent of cattle and sun-baked earth. Somewhere behind the buildings, metal clinked softly. Tools, not weapons. He gestured toward the shade of the porch. "You can sit if you want." She did not move. "I'll stand," she replied. He accepted that without comment. They faced each other then. Not as enemies, not as lovers, not even as negotiators. Just two people standing on land that had decided to matter too much. "I won't insult you by pretending I don't know why you're here," he said. "But I won't talk about arrangements today either." Asha's brow tightened slightly. That was not what she expected. "I'm listening," she said cautiously. He met her gaze again, steady, searching, but not invasive. "I want to ask you something first." She waited. "Do you want to be here?" The question landed wrong, or perhaps too right. Asha felt her breath pause just briefly. No man had ever asked her that before. Not her father, not the elders, not the council who had weighed her future like grain. Everyone else had decided why she was here. No one had asked if she wanted to be. She did not answer right away. "I didn't say it was fair," he added quietly. "Only that your answer matters." She studied him now with sharpened focus. There was no softness in his tone meant to coax her. No false concern. Just a plain truth offered without decoration. "I don't want to be traded," she said at last. He nodded once. "I figured." "You control the water," she continued. "The routes, the land my people use before fences." "I do," he said, "and I won't pretend otherwise." Her jaw tightened, waiting for the rest. But it did not come. He did not justify himself. He did not speak of progress or law or destiny. He did not tell her people needed saving. He did not offer protection wrapped in ownership. Instead, he said, "I don't want someone standing here because they were pushed." Something in her chest shifted, sharp and unwelcome. "That kind of agreement rots from the inside," he went on, "and it takes everyone down with it." Asha folded her arms slowly, grounding herself. "Then why agree to this at all?" His gaze flicked toward the horizon, where the land stretched unbroken and harsh. "Because if I don't," he said, "someone else will. Someone less careful. Someone who won't bother asking you anything." That answer unsettled her more than any threat could have. He turned back to her. "I won't force you into a role you can't breathe in, and I won't pretend you're something to be fixed." The words landed heavy. She had been bracing for pressure, for pity, for the subtle cruelty of benevolence. She had prepared herself to be resisted. She had not prepared herself to be respected. "Then what do you want?" she asked quietly. He considered the question. "I want peace that doesn't taste like blood later," he said, "and I want honesty, from both sides." Asha felt something dangerous stir beneath her ribs. This man did not see her as a prize. He did not see her as a problem. He did not see her as a symbol. He saw her, and that frightened her more than rifles or fences ever had. Because violence was simple, it made its intentions clear. Respect blurred lines. It invited understanding. It made space where there should have been only conflict. And standing there on his porch, under a sky that belonged to neither of them, Asha realized with quiet dread that she was beginning to look at him not as an enemy, but as a man. She turned away before he could read too much in her silence. Behind her, the ranch stood waiting, and so did the man who did not try to claim her, unaware that by refusing to take, he had already begun to change everything. The town festival rose from the dust like a borrowed dream. Oil lamps swung from wooden posts, casting amber halos across the main street. Fiddles and harmonicas stitched together a restless tune that drifted over laughter, boots, and clinking bottles. White settlers crowded the storefronts with flushed faces and loose voices. On the far side of the square, Apache families stood together, quieter, watchful, present, but never fully invited. Asha moved among her people like a shadow. She wore no ornament meant to draw the eye. Her hair was braided simply, her shoulders bare to the night breeze. Children passed her without stopping. Elders nodded once and looked away. Tonight was not for her. Tonight belonged to negotiations that pretended to be celebration. She felt the weight of it pressing in. Music too loud, smiles too sharp. The uneasy closeness of two worlds forced into the same narrow street. The smell of whiskey tangled with sweat and dust. The lamps hissed softly, their flames trembling in the wind. Across the square, the ranch owner stood near the edge of the crowd. He did not drink, he did not laugh, he watched. The sight of him tightened something in her chest. Dry land had a way of making its claims quietly, and he stood like the land itself, solid, contained, refusing to beg for attention. Men spoke to him and moved on. Women glanced and looked away. He stayed where he was, hands loose at his sides, eyes alert but distant. Asha turned away. This was not the place for looking. This was the place for endings. The thought had come to her earlier, sharp and desperate. If he sees me as wrong for his world, the agreement will break. Not by force, not by argument, by incompatibility, by the quiet refusal of a man who valued order over complication. She did not want him to see her as a bridge. She wanted him to see her as a problem. The plan was reckless, she knew that. But recklessness was sometimes the only language left when every careful word had already been used against you. Asha slipped away from the edge of the square, letting the noise swallow her absence. She moved into a darker pocket near the feed store, where the lamps thinned and the music dulled to a distant thrum. The air smelled of hay and old wood. Footsteps approached, measured, unhurried. She did not turn until she felt the presence beside her, close enough to feel warmth, not close enough to touch. "You shouldn't be alone back here," he said quietly. She looked up. Moonlight traced his face, sharpening the lines she had learned at the creek. The steady eyes, the mouth set in restraint rather than judgment. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The music swelled and fell, the crowd roaring and fading like a restless tide. "This is your town," she said. "I'll manage." His gaze held hers. "That's what worries me." Something flickered. Irritation, fear, resolve. Asha made her decision before doubt could reach her. She stepped closer, close enough that his breath caught, just slightly. Close enough that the space he had so carefully preserved collapsed into something intimate and dangerous. "I need to do something," she said, her voice low. "Something that makes this stop." He frowned. "Asha," she did not let him finish. She rose onto her toes and kissed him. It was not planned. It was not graceful. It was heat and confusion and a sudden loss of balance she had not expected. Her lips found his with a soft collision that sent a sharp current through her chest, startling in its intensity. For one breathless instant, he froze. Then he responded, not with hunger, not with force, but with control so fierce it made her knees weaken. His mouth moved against hers carefully, deliberately, as if every instinct in his body had been ordered to stand down. His hand lifted, then stopped, hovering near her waist without touching. The kiss deepened anyway, brief, aching, undone by everything they had not said. Asha pulled back first, startled by the rush of sensation, by the way her heart hammered like it had been waiting for this moment to arrive. She opened her eyes and found his. Recognition hit her like a blow. It was him, the man at the creek, the ranch owner, the man whose land held her people's future in its grip. He stared at her, breath uneven, something raw flashing across his features before it vanished beneath discipline. His jaw tightened. His hand dropped back to his side. "That was a mistake," she said quickly, the words tumbling out. "Yes," he agreed, "but not the kind you think." He took a step back, one full pace, restoring distance with visible effort. The movement felt louder than any shout. I won't let it go further, he said quietly. Not like this. Not for the wrong reasons. The restraint in his voice cut deeper than rejection would have. Asha's chest burned. You should, she said. You should see that I don't belong here. That this, she gestured vaguely between them, won't work. His gaze softened, just enough to hurt. I see exactly what this is, he said, and I won't use it to trap you. The music swelled again, laughter breaking against the night. Somewhere a bottle shattered. Asha stepped away, her pulse wild, her thoughts tangled and furious. She had wanted him to recoil, to judge, to withdraw. He had done none of those things. She turned and disappeared back into the light, her cheeks burning, her mouth still tingling with the memory of his restraint. Behind her, he stood alone in the shadow, breathing hard, knowing one thing with sudden, unsettling clarity. This woman was dangerous, not because she tempted him, but because she made him want to choose restraint. And that, in a land built on taking, might be the most dangerous thing of all. Asha arrived at the ranch with no witnesses and no ceremony. There was no wedding, no exchange of words meant to bind souls or impress neighbors. No announcement was made to the town, no celebration arranged to soften the truth. She came with only what she could carry, blankets folded by her own hands, a small bundle of herbs, the quiet weight of everything she was not allowed to name. The agreement was simple, too simple. She would stay, the land would remain open, the water would keep flowing. Nothing more was spoken aloud. The man, whose name she still struggled to say in her thoughts, showed her where she would sleep. A small room set apart from the main quarters, clean, spare, a window facing east, catching the morning light before the heat settled in. If you need anything, he said, standing in the doorway without crossing it, you ask. She nodded once, and that was how it began. Days passed without incident. He rose before dawn and returned near sunset, dust clinging to his boots, sweat darkening his shirt. He spoke little, but when he did, his words were careful. He never entered her room uninvited, never lingered too close, never touched her, not even by accident. When she burned sage at dusk, he did not comment. When she faced east at sunrise and whispered prayers under her breath, he turned away, giving her privacy without being asked. When she startled awake from sleep more than once, heart racing for reasons she could not explain, he pretended not to notice the shadows under her eyes. His restraint was constant, deliberate, and exhausting. Asha told herself she should be grateful. Instead, she felt unmoored. She tried to fit herself into the rhythms of the ranch. She learned where tools were kept, how meals were prepared, which doors stayed closed when the wind turned sharp. She dressed more plainly, tying her hair back the way the women in town did. She listened more than she spoke. She laughed when expected. Each small adjustment felt reasonable. Together, they felt like erosion. At night, when the ranch settled into stillness, she sat on the edge of her bed and wondered where she had gone. Not physically, something deeper, something quieter. The girl who had stood at the edge of the Apache camp, watching the valley with clear eyes, felt distant now, blurred by caution and effort. He noticed. He noticed the way her voice softened, how her steps grew lighter, as if she were trying not to leave a mark. He noticed the way she stopped correcting people when they spoke over her, how she tucked pieces of herself away like tools no longer needed. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the land copper and gold, he found her standing near the fence line, staring out at the open stretch beyond the ranch. You don't have to stand like that, he said quietly. She didn't turn. Like what? Like you're bracing for a blow. Asha exhaled slowly. Habit. They stood there together, not touching, not facing each other. The land breathed around them, wide and indifferent. I thought this would be easier, she said at last. For who? He asked. For everyone, she replied. If I learned how to belong here. He frowned slightly. Is that what you're trying to do? She hesitated. Isn't that what's expected? The wind picked up, carrying the smell of dust and distant water. He turned then, fully facing her, his expression not stern but intent. I never asked you to belong to my world, he said. I asked you to stay. She met his gaze, something sharp rising behind her eyes. What's the difference? He considered her carefully before answering. The difference, he said, is whether you're still yourself when you wake up. The words struck harder than she expected. She looked away quickly, afraid he would see too much. I'm fine, she said. This is what compromise looks like. No, he replied softly. This is what disappearance looks like. Her chest tightened. She opened her mouth to argue, but the truth pressed against her ribs, heavy and undeniable. "I don't want you to disappear in my world," he said. The sentence hung between them, unclaimed and unadorned. Not a promise, not a confession, just a boundary drawn with care. Asha swallowed. For the first time since arriving at the ranch, she felt the ground shift beneath her, not with danger, but with possibility. And that frightened her more than the fences ever had. She nodded once, unable to speak. Behind them, the sun slipped fully below the horizon. The land darkened, vast and waiting. And in the quiet that followed, Asha realized something she was not yet ready to admit. Staying was not the hardest part. Remaining herself would be. The first warning came on horseback. Asha heard it before she saw it. The rhythm of hooves too deliberate to belong to ranch hands. The faint clink of metal carried by the wind. She stood near the main house, grinding herbs beneath her palm, when dust lifted at the far end of the drive. 3 riders approached. The man beside her straightened slowly, eyes narrowing, not in surprise but recognition. The land seemed to tighten around him, as if it too remembered what was coming. The woman rode in front. She dismounted with practiced ease, skirts clean despite the dust, posture sharp with confidence earned from being welcomed everywhere she went. Her hair was pinned carefully, her smile precise. Asha did not need an introduction to know who she was. This was a woman who had once belonged here. She looked at the man first, her gaze lingering, familiar in a way that made Asha's stomach tighten. "You've been difficult to reach," she said lightly. "I thought perhaps you'd gone soft." He did not return the smile. "Say what you came to say." Her eyes flicked to Asha then, quick, assessing, dismissive. "I see you've taken on responsibility." The word landed like a blade. Behind her, a local official stepped forward, hat tipped low, eyes already counting land instead of people. "We're here to talk about boundaries," he said. "Water rights, expansion." Asha felt the pressure immediately. It pressed against her ribs the way storms pressed against the valley. Slow, inevitable, practiced. "The Apache camp sits where it always has," the official continued. "But times change. We're offering solutions." The woman smiled again, sharper this time. "Solutions that benefit everyone, provided certain adjustments are made." Asha understood the implication before it was spoken. Assimilation, relocation, disappearance dressed as progress. "You'd be more comfortable," the woman added, turning fully toward Asha now, "if you embraced a different way of living. People are more willing to cooperate when they feel you're meeting them halfway." Asha's fingers curled slowly, the herbs forgotten beneath her hand. She felt the old instinct rise, the urge to retreat, to hold herself smaller, quieter, easier to tolerate. Before she could speak, the man stepped forward. He did not raise his voice. He did not touch the woman or the official. He simply placed himself between them and Asha, the movement subtle but absolute, like a gate closing. "She's not yours to judge," he said. The sentence was calm, flat, unarguable. The woman blinked, caught off guard. "I wasn't—" "You were," he replied, "and you won't again." The official shifted uncomfortably. "Now there's no need to be hostile. We're talking about what's best for the region." "What's best for the region," the man said evenly, "doesn't involve erasing people who were here before you learned how to spell the land's name." Silence followed, thick, stunned. Asha watched his back, felt the weight of his presence without being hidden by it. He wasn't shielding her like something fragile. He was standing beside her like something immovable. The woman's expression hardened. "You're choosing sides," she said quietly. He met her gaze without hesitation. "I already have." The official cleared his throat. "We'll revisit this," he said, gesturing toward the horses. "These matters don't disappear just because you don't like how they sound." "They won't," the man agreed, "but neither will we." The riders mounted again, dust rising around them as they turned back toward town. The woman looked over her shoulder once more, her eyes flicking to Asha with something like disbelief. When they were gone, the land exhaled. Asha remained still, heart pounding, not from fear but from something sharper and far more dangerous. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Yeah," he said, "I did." "This puts you in their path," she said. "It complicates everything." He studied her for a long moment. "You were already in their path," he replied. "I just refused to step aside." The truth of it settled slowly, heavily. All this time she had believed his restraint was caution, that his respect was neutrality, that his distance meant he was standing on the fence, waiting for a cleaner outcome. She saw now how wrong she had been. He wasn't balancing between sides. He was choosing, not loudly, not proudly, but deliberately. Asha looked out toward the valley where the Apache camp lay beyond sight, but never beyond reach. She felt something shift inside her. Not relief, not gratitude, but recognition. He wasn't only honoring the agreement. He wasn't only protecting access to water or land. He was standing where she stood, taking the weight with her instead of asking her to carry it alone. And for the first time since she had stepped onto this ranch, Asha allowed herself to understand the truth she had been resisting. This man was not just keeping his word to her people. He was choosing her. Night settled over the ranch slowly, the way it always did, without ceremony, without asking permission. The sky darkened into a deep, endless blue, stars coming alive one by one. Somewhere beyond the fences, coyotes called to each other, their voices lonely but sure. Asha sat on the low steps of the main house, knees drawn close, watching the lantern light sway in the wind. The day had left her drained in a way sleep could not fix. What had happened earlier, the visitors, the words spoken, the line he had drawn, kept replaying in her mind like a wound that refused to close. He joined her without a word, lowering himself onto the step beside her, far enough to leave space, close enough to be present. The boards creaked softly under his weight. For a long moment, they said nothing. Silence between them had become familiar. It was never empty. It carried thought, memory, restraint. "You didn't have to stand there like that today," Asha said at last, her voice quiet. "You could have let them speak." He looked out toward the dark land. "I could have," he agreed. "But you didn't." "No." She turned her head slightly, studying the profile of his face in the lantern glow. The lines carved by sun and weather, the calm that never seemed accidental. "You made enemies," she said. "For me." "For what's right," he corrected gently. Asha exhaled, slow and shaky. "That's the problem." He glanced at her then, sensing the shift beneath her words. "Talk to me." She hesitated. This was harder than facing officials or insults or threats dressed as offers. This required her to step into a space with no defenses. "I've been trying to understand why I can't breathe," she said finally, "even when you give me room." He stayed still, listening. "I thought it was fear of being here," she continued, "of this land, this house, your world." Her fingers tightened in the fabric of her skirt. "But that's not it," she swallowed. "I'm afraid of what happens if I let myself care." The words hung between them, bare and unprotected. He did not interrupt. Asha forced herself to keep going. "If I love you," she said, her voice cracking just slightly, "I'm afraid I'll start letting go of everything else. My people, my language, the ways I was raised to carry forward." She shook her head. "I've seen it happen, slowly, quietly, one compromise at a time." She finally turned to face him fully, eyes bright but steady. "I don't know how to love someone from your world without losing mine." The night seemed to hold its breath. He did not reach for her. He did not try to soften the truth with comfort. He absorbed it the way he absorbed everything, carefully, honestly. When he spoke, his voice was low, unembellished. "I won't ask you to stop being Apache. That was all. No vows, no promises carved out of air, no speeches about unity or destiny. Just a boundary drawn clear and firm." Asha stared at him, unsure she had heard correctly. "You don't know what that means," she said. "I know enough," he replied. "It means I don't get to reshape you into something easier. And it means if you stay, it's because you choose to, not because you disappear." Her breath caught. "I won't pretend I understand every part of your world," he went on. "And I won't ask you to trade it for mine. If there's a future here, it has to make room for who you already are." Something inside her fractured then, not painfully but completely. Her chest tightened, breath stuttering as emotions surged past the walls she had built since the council lodge. Tears welled before she could stop them, blurring the stars overhead. She turned away quickly, ashamed of the weakness. But he did not move closer. He did not look away either. Asha covered her face with one hand as the first tear slipped free, then another. Her shoulders shook silently, years of restraint unraveling in the dark. She had cried before, for loss, for duty, for the slow erosion of land and certainty. But this was different. This was grief and relief tangled together. The grief of realizing how afraid she had been, and the relief of being seen without being reduced. "I didn't know it was possible," she whispered, her voice breaking, "to be chosen without being claimed. He said nothing, letting the truth stand on its own. After a long while, her breathing steadied. She lowered her hand, wiping her cheeks with the back of her sleeve, embarrassed and exhausted. He finally spoke quietly. "You don't owe me answers tonight." Asha nodded, unable to speak yet. But as she looked out over the land, dark, vast, waiting, she felt something shift into place. For the first time, her tears had not been demanded by duty or survival. They had come because someone had looked at her, not as a symbol, not as a solution, but as herself. And in that recognition, Asha understood something that both terrified and steadied her. Her fear had never been about losing her people. It had been about never being allowed to keep herself. Tonight, for the first time, that fear loosened its grip. The rain came without warning. It swept across the land in hard, slanting sheets, drumming against the roof and turning the dust into dark, breathing earth. Thunder rolled low in the distance, not violent, but persistent, like a reminder that even dry land remembered how to break open. Asha woke to the sound of it. For a long moment, she lay still, staring at the faint outline of the ceiling above her, listening to water run where it had once refused to. Her chest felt tight, not with fear, but with clarity so sharp it almost hurt. This night was different. She rose quietly, pulling a shawl around her shoulders, bare feet touching the cool floor. The house was asleep. Lantern light flickered faintly down the hall, shadows stretching and retreating with the storm. She stopped outside his door. Asha rested her palm against the wood, feeling the steady presence on the other side. Her heart beat hard, but not in panic, not in obligation. She knew exactly why she was here, and for the first time, the reason belonged only to her. She knocked once. The door opened almost immediately, as if he had not been sleeping at all. He stood there in the dim light, hair damp from the humidity, shirt loose and unbuttoned at the collar. His expression shifted from surprise to concern in the space of a breath. "Asha," he said quietly, "are you all right?" She nodded, yes. The rain thundered louder, filling the silence she left behind. She took a step forward, crossing the threshold without waiting to be invited. "I need to stay," she said, "tonight." He did not touch her. He did not move aside to block her path either. He simply searched her face, careful, measured. "Only if you want to," he said. "I do." The words felt solid when she spoke them. Anchored. He stepped back, giving her room. She entered, the door closing softly behind her, shutting out the storm, but not the sound of rain against the walls. The room was simple. Bed neatly made, boots set aside, a chair near the window where the lantern burned low. They stood facing each other, close enough now to feel warmth, to sense the weight of what this moment carried. He lifted his hand slowly, stopping just short of her cheek, waiting. Asha leaned into the touch. The contact was gentle, his palm warm against her skin, his thumb brushing a line along her jaw with reverence rather than claim. She felt herself exhale, tension leaving her shoulders as if she had been holding it for years. They kissed then, not with urgency, not with hunger sharpened by denial, but with care. His mouth met hers slowly, asking rather than taking. She answered without hesitation, her hands resting against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm beneath. Everything about it was unhurried. When they moved closer, it was because they chose to. When clothing fell away, it was done piece by piece, pauses woven between motions, each step checked by a look, a breath, a quiet question answered without words. The rain softened outside, steady and constant. He guided her to the bed, not pressing her down, but letting her settle, letting her decide where she wanted to be. His touch remained attentive, never assuming, always listening. Every movement carried restraint shaped by trust. Asha felt herself grounded in a way she had not expected. This was not escape, this was not surrender. It was presence. She traced the scar along his side, familiar now, and felt him still beneath her touch. Not withdrawing, not advancing. Just there. "You don't have to," he began. She shook her head gently, resting her forehead against his. "I know." Their closeness deepened, quiet and sure, shaped by the understanding they had built rather than the storm outside. When she finally let herself rest against him, her breath evened, her thoughts unknotted. In the hush that followed, rain tapping softly against the window, Asha found the words she had been carrying since the night at the creek. "I don't feel lost with you," she whispered. His arms tightened just enough to answer her, holding without enclosing. "I don't feel lost with you," she whispered. His arms tightened just enough to answer her, holding without enclosing. Good, he said softly. Then stay found. She closed her eyes, a faint smile touching her lips as the storm eased beyond the walls. For the first time since stepping onto this land, she felt no pull backward, no fear of erasure. And in that choice, made freely and without witness, Asha understood that whatever came next, conflict, consequence, or reckoning, she would meet it whole. The valley did not change overnight. Land rarely did, but the lines drawn across it softened. The winter came hard as predicted. Cold winds, thin grass, nights that pressed breath from the chest. Yet the wells held. The creek did not vanish beneath ice. Cattle were turned away from sacred water at dawn, not by force but by agreement. Fences were moved, not erased but bent just enough to let old paths breathe again. The Apache remained. Their camp stayed where it had always been, smoke rising in the mornings, children's voices cutting through the quiet. The elders sat by the fire and spoke of weather and memory, not relocation, not disappearance. Between the camp and the ranch, something new took shape. Not ownership, not surrender, a threshold. The land where the ranch ended became a place of meeting. Trade happened there. Conversation happened there. No flags were raised. No documents were celebrated. It was not peace written on paper. It was peace practiced daily, imperfect and alive. Asha moved between both worlds without losing herself. She did not cut her hair to please town women. She did not abandon her language for convenience. She prayed at dawn as she always had, and when she walked the ranch, she walked as Apache, not softened, not translated. He never asked her to change, and she never asked him to step away from what he was. They learned the shape of each other slowly, with patience earned rather than promised. When conflict came, as it always did, they faced it side by side, not merged, not divided. He spoke when his voice carried weight. She spoke when truth required it. Neither spoke for the other. On the morning of the first spring gathering, Asha stood at the center of the Apache camp, sunlight warming the earth beneath her bare feet. The people moved around her, women preparing food, elders greeting one another, children running in wide, laughing circles. She belonged here. At the edge of the camp, he waited. He did not cross the boundary uninvited. He did not assume welcome because of proximity or affection. He stood where the land shifted from open to sacred, hat in hand, posture relaxed but respectful. Asha saw him from across the clearing. For a moment, she stayed where she was, letting the distance remain. This was her place. These were her people. This ground held her history deeper than memory. Then she turned. She walked toward him, steps steady, her presence quieting the space around her. The conversation softened. The movement slowed. Eyes followed, not in suspicion, but in acknowledgement. She reached him and stopped. He looked at her, waiting. Asha extended her hand. He took it without pulling her closer, without stepping forward. Their fingers laced gently, a connection made visible but not imposed. The land held its breath. Asha faced her people again, his hand still in hers. She did not explain. She did not justify. She did not ask permission. She did not need to. Love, she had learned, did not demand erasure. It did not require her to leave her roots behind, to translate herself into something smaller or quieter. It asked only for a place where she could stand fully. Apache, woman, choosing. The wind moved through the valley, carrying the scent of damp earth and new grass. Somewhere the creek ran steady, neither claimed nor forgotten. Asha tightened her grip slightly, a silent promise shared without words. And as the morning unfolded, imperfect, unfinished, real, the question lingered in the air, not answered, not closed. What would the world look like if love did not take, but made room? The valley listened and waited.